The Online Safety Act, or OSA, has become something of a lightning rod for people's frustrations with the current Labour government. To many, it shows just how amateurish Keir Starmer's government is, and how little they seem to care about public opinion. The main frustration seems to be around the so-called porn ban, something we made a video on a couple of weeks ago. In essence, these new rules require websites to determine every single user's age in order to access their content, either via age estimation or age verification. Wrapped up in all this, certain types of content, such as subreddits discussing Israel's war crimes in Gaza and explicit songs and podcasts on Spotify, have also been blocked to users under 18 and those unwilling to verify their age. To top it all off, if the plans remain unchanged, Wikipedia could end up being restricted in the UK. For many opponents of the new rules, this demonstrates just how pervasive they are, and shows that the government is all too ready to sacrifice free speech, free expression, and data privacy at the altar of child safety, even when it's not clear that the Act is actually doing all that much on this front anyway. So in this video, we're going to have a look into this, have a look at some of the side effects of the OSA, and ultimately, whether it's failed. Never miss an episode and always feel in the loop by subscribing and ringing the bell. Now, the OSA itself actually made its way through Parliament all the way back in 2023, under the then Conservative government. However, not everything in the Act immediately became law. Instead, the government accepted that certain elements would be passed to the UK's communication regulator, Ofcom, to issue codes of practice for and then implement and enforce. These were split into 3 phases. The first, which was implemented earlier in the year, was focused on tackling illegal content, such as child sexual abuse material. The second, which was implemented in July, was focused on stopping children accessing harmful content, such as online pornography. And the third are further duties for categorised services, which will come later in the year. Now, it's the second 2 of these steps that people have taken issue with. So let's have a look at these in turn. Firstly, when it comes to the phase focusing on stopping children accessing harmful content, especially porn, one of the main issues that people raised about it was about data privacy. Ofcom has not established a central agency to check age, so any user attempting to be verified is doing so by giving a private third-party sensitive information about themselves. As a result of the OSA, an extra 5 million age checks are being carried out each day. Little is known about these age verifiers, and there's a very real concern that a single dodgy age verification website could leak huge amounts of sensitive data about people. Part of the reason why so many age verification checks are now being used is that so many websites have implemented age checks. As we mentioned in the intro, even sites and services that aren't primarily for adult content, such as Spotify, Reddit, X, formerly Twitter, Discord, Xbox, and Blue Sky, have implemented age checks. Concerned that if children come across adult content on their platforms, they could be liable to a fine worth either £18 million or 10% of their worldwide revenue, whichever's higher. This is putting people in a position where they have to choose to take the risk with these verifiers or lose access to the aforementioned sites and apps. This would be bad enough on its own if the restrictions had worked. However, the evidence has become clearer and clearer in the last few weeks that the new rules have just been ineffectual. Proton VPN saw a 1,400% increase in British sign-ups in the days after the new rules came into effect, and NordVPN saw 1,000% growth. This goes to show just how ineffectual the rules actually are. All of this attracted attention from the Americans, with the US State Department official explaining that Trump's team is watching OSA developments with great interest and concern. Republican Congressman Jim Jordan explained there's general concern, and then there's concern on how this impacts American citizens, American companies, and infringes on our First Amendment. As long as foreign legislators, judges, and regulators continue their attempt to silence US citizens, we'll not stop fighting back. Clearly then, there were already some pretty big issues, with opposition not just at home, but abroad too. But things could be about to get a lot worse. In Phase 3 of the OSA rollout, Ofcom is targeting big tech companies and making them more responsible for their users. To do so, there were 3 different levels of duties placed on 3 different categorizations of websites: Category 1, Category 2A, and Category 2B. Category 1 is defined as a website that uses a content recommender system and has more than 34 million UK users on the site, around 50% of the UK population, or allows users to forward or reshare user-generated content, uses a content recommender system, and has more than 7 million UK users on the user-to-user part of the service, around 10% of the UK population. A Category 2A site is a search service with more than 7 million UK users, again around 10% of the UK's population, and a Category 2B site is a direct messaging service that has more than 3 million UK users, around 5% of the UK's population. Any website or app that falls into these three categories will be subject to new duties, with the most stringent being placed on those in Category 1. Now, the issue here is that these rules are quite evidently designed for massive tech companies like Google and Meta, who will be forced to spend more money ensuring that content on their platforms is safe and accurate. However, for a website like Wikipedia, which is a non-profit and relies on volunteers, it would essentially break their whole model. In a statement, it claimed that if designated a Category 1 provider, it would face huge challenges to meet the large technological and staffing needs to comply with duties. In fact, they even went further and suggested that if they remained designated a Category 1 provider, they would need to reduce the amount of people in the UK using the service by about 3/4. As such, Wikipedia launched a legal challenge, arguing that the criteria for categorization is logically flawed, and that Wikipedia would fall under Category 1, even though it was never the policy intention. The judge threw the case out on numerous grounds, but did add that any decision to make Wikipedia a Category 1 provider would have to be justified as proportionate if it were not to amount to a breach of the right to freedom of expression. All in all then, there are some serious flaws that have already been exposed with the OSA, both domestically and internationally. Right now, though, even despite the opposition, it's unclear whether the government is planning to address them. Now, when you're diving into complicated topics such as this, it's quite easy to get caught up in what you know without even missing a beat. But what about the stories you don't see? Or what happens when the stories you do see are purposefully leaving out information to try and sway your thinking? Thankfully, our sponsor this week, Ground News, are experts at helping with just that. Ground News is a website and app that collects thousands of articles from around the world and puts them all in one place for you to easily compare how news is being covered by different outlets online. For each and every story, you can see the number of sources reporting on it, as well as the political bias, factuality, and ownership of said sources. For example, if we take this story on Wikipedia losing their court challenge against the Online Safety Act regulations, you can see that there were 44 sources reporting on it, with 11 of them coming from the left and only 4 of them coming from the right. You can even compare the headlines to see what either side is saying, with the left emphasising the Online Safety Act as a threat to free speech and human rights, in contrast to the right, who frames the law as a necessary safeguard against harmful online content. That's not all though. Ground News has tons of super handy features. Our personal favourite is their blind spot feed. Here you can find stories that have been disproportionately covered by one side of the political spectrum, helping you challenge your perspective on someone else's media reality. Here at TLDR, we're passionate about helping you understand how bias may affect the media you consume, something Ground News also firmly believes in. Because of this, we're offering 40% off the Unlimited Access Vantage Plan subscription by using the link in the description or scanning the QR code on screen. You can only access this discount through our link, so make sure you go to ground.news/TLDR or click the link in the description to get started today.